So just a little primer activity for you. Everybody should have a blank note card, right? And I'm a high school teacher in my day job. And so we like to do activities to kind of get the brain warmed up and get you rolling. And so we're going to do that same thing today. So on that blank note card is going to be really important as we go. So pick a side, doesn't matter whether it's the line side or the blank side, but whatever side you pick, I'd like to have you kind of process through the question that I have on the screen to begin with, all right? So as you think about our building, our current CBC building, what are some challenges and limitations that you see in our current facility, all right? And if you're kind of having a hard time, like, well, I don't know, and maybe take the perspective of somebody different than you. So maybe you take the perspective of a young family with young children that's coming to CBC and looking for a new church home. All right, what might be some challenges and limitations that they see? All right, or maybe you take the perspective of one of our prime timers, and I put in parentheses up there, right? They're still young in mind. That's right, Still sharp in mind, but the body doesn't quite keep up the same. All right, so. And as you we're going to collect those cards at the end of the night. We're going to use the other side for something different here in a little bit. And that's going to be just a way that you can get some written communication back to the elders as we go, all right? So that's our way to kind of get our mind thinking. And we got a few more people coming in, so we won't start the actual formal part until so. All right. Well, I'll introduce myself as we kind of get rolling here. So for those of you who don't know me, my name is Jeremy Hazelhorst. I serve as the elder chair here at Community Bible Church. And I mentioned already I'm a high school teacher. That's my day job. I also coach cross country and track. And our track season officially started last week, and it's been cold. So I'm thankful to be warm and inside. And I always used to think I was pretty tough, but the older I get and the longer I coach, the more I realize, I just don't like cold weather. So, and the start of this track season is testing me a little bit more than normal. So, but as we go tonight, the goal of this presentation is to share with you the information that the elders have processed as we've come to the conclusion and made the recommendation that we're recommending that CBC looks to move to a new location. So what's all the information that we've taken in? And our goal is to share that with you, kind of walk you through that process, and then also give you the opportunity to ask some questions tonight if you have any. And I think it's important for us to understand as we go through this process, it's okay if your emotions, as you start to think about this, can change from one day to the next. I think that's normal. That would be what I experienced even as an elder as we've gone through this process. One day I can be, I'm to the point now where I'm all in and I'm confident God is leading us in this process, but you go back a year ago and there'd be days where I'd be like, yeah, this is a good idea. And the next day I'd be like, well, I don't know. And I think it's normal human nature for us to process things and have to work through those emotions. And so the only way we can do that is through information and by having communication and the chance to dialogue, and that's what tonight gives us the opportunity to do. So as we go through tonight, if there's a question that kind of comes to your mind, that's what the other side of that note card is for. Again, I mentioned I'm a high school teacher, and my high school students they might have a question and they wait till the end of the lesson to ask, and then you probably know what happens. Oh yeah, I forgot my question, right? So we don't want you to forget your questions. Your questions are important. And so if you come up with a question as we go through this presentation, please jot it down on that note card. And then when we get time to have questions, if you're comfortable sharing that question with the group, we'll answer it as best as we can tonight. But even if you're not comfortable asking that question in the group, we're going to collect those cards. And we have an elder meeting tomorrow night. And we're going to process through those questions and talk about those things. And we know our job as elders will be to communicate back, even based on the questions that get asked. tonight. And I typed up all the note cards from yesterday's town hall meetings, and I had about 7 pages of questions and comments and thoughts, and that's great. That's important, right? And I was very encouraged just by what we received back from a feedback standpoint, and it was good that people were being open and communicating. So I'd encourage you to do that even as we go through tonight, all right? So as we have embarked kind of on this journey, we have put together a capital campaign team, and I am chairing that alongside with Mel Friesen, who's right over here. Kathy Dick is also on that team. James Kopsa is on that team. Pastor Chuck is on that team, and Lori Bedke is on that team. And our capital campaign team came up with the theme, Forward in Faith, as what we're going to focus on. And I think you'll see that that's very appropriate as we go through this presentation. Our theme verse is 2 Corinthians 5:7. For we walk by faith and not by sight. And again, I think you'll see how that's an appropriate verse as we go through this presentation and what we have to share with you tonight. All right. So I think one thing that's important to think about as we look back over the history of CBC, and I know this might be a little difficult to read, but as we think about CBC's history, and this was pulled right out of the 50-year celebration booklet that was put together a couple of years ago, and we can see that CBC has always been a church that's been blessed with leadership who has an eye on the present and an eye on the future. And we are benefiting today because of the vision of past leaders and the sacrifices that congregations have come before us, people who have been a part of CBC have sacrificed to make what we get to experience on a Sunday on a regular basis possible, right? You think about where CBC started, and it was across the parking lot in the annex, right? And we wouldn't fit in that place anymore, right? It serves we don't fit in this place at times, but we definitely wouldn't fit there. It serves our middle school and our high school students well at times, right? But even there's some challenges with that. And then you can think about when they built, really the room that we're sitting in right now, the original CBC building. And then they added on a gym and some offices, and then they put on another addition with the education wing, right? And again, all of those sacrifices of people who have come before us, we get to benefit from today. And so we have to process now, can we have the same vision and can we make the same sacrifices to benefit future people who are going to walk in the doors of CBC? And that's an important thing for us to consider, to be thankful for, but also think about what's our role in the future of CBC. So I think it's important to remember that CBC has always had a history of growth and building and looking ahead towards the future, and we're in that same place even still today. And so I just want to share some numbers with you to give you kind of a snapshot of our current location. And about a month or so ago, I came up here on a Saturday evening with a tape measure and just did some counting and some measuring, and I'm a math teacher, so I'm kind of good with numbers. That's helpful, right? But it just to kind of help put a perspective of where we're at, all right? We have 133 parking spots on site, okay? One of my favorite numbers is if you think about the elevation change from Q Street to our front door. I had to do a little trigonometry to figure this one out, right? So when those students say, when am I ever going to use this? If you're ever on a church elder board, you're going to use trig. So, but a little trigonometry and calculated that it's 27-foot elevation change. And I don't think any of us are surprised by that number if you've had to walk up our drive, right, to know the challenges that our parking lot can face from an elevation standpoint. Or if you've had to go down the drive on an icy Sunday, right, in your vehicle. So there's a reason why it's nicknamed Faith Hill, right? You think about the total square footage of our building, and that's not just this building. That includes the annex across the street and also the storage shed, which we haven't had to use for Awana yet on a Wednesday night, but we might be getting close, right? So there's just under 27,000 square feet that make up our facility, all right, that we use, and I think we use very well on a Sunday and on a Wednesday night. The foyer number, to me, is kind of a really surprising. I mean, we can all recognize we've got a really small foyer. It's 540 square feet. Right? I think there's some houses that you could go through today that have master suites about that size, right? And we're using that for the entrance to our worship center. And we think about, is that a welcoming environment to guests? If you walk in as service is getting out and you're trying to navigate your way through a conversation without walking right through the middle, but you don't know where to go, right? We kind of do that Sunday morning dance when you leave church. So these numbers, I think, help us understand, or maybe help us understand, again, the stresses that we feel. I don't think there's anything shocking by that. And I think it's important to dive a little bit deeper into the numbers as well. If you look at current church building trends, right, they recommend one parking spot for every 2 to 2.5 people, okay? So if we think about our parking that we have available, that means we can handle about 330 people on site at one time. And I think there's many times where we're probably well above that number. We're thankful for families like the Gosens who really max out a parking spot. If you know the Gosens, right? I don't know how many kids are they up to now, 8, 9? So, they drive their big van and park it, and they are helping us up that number, but that's not all of us in our church family, right? If you look at our children's ministry area, and again, current building trends, so we've got just over 2,500 square feet of classroom space, and current building trends recommend 25 square feet per child, right? So that means on a Sunday morning, we could handle 100 children, and we're not far from that number on a Sunday morning. I think Seth Guthrie said yesterday we're between about 70 and 80, right? So, I mean, we got a little bit of room to grow, but that's if they're even in the right classes, right? Are they coming in to the right classes where we actually have room? And so, again, this is, just helping us maybe understand some of the limitations that we face. So when we began this discussion as an elder board, you going to go for me here? There we go. All right. We as an elder board kind of identified a few key areas that we really see as major concerns with our current location. And these aren't in any particular order, but I think one of the really major concerns for us as an elder board is when you think about our current children's ministry areas, and especially how difficult it is to create a secure children's ministry area. For those of you who are here on a Sunday, if you go from the sanctuary and you go down to the fellowship hall to pick up maybe a coffee or a bite to eat, you walk right through our children's ministry area, right? Everybody does. And as they're trying to check people in and we're trying to keep those kids secure, and I think we have to recognize we live in a day and age where children's security is very important. I work at a school district that just passed a bond issue last year. And a number of our metro area school districts passed bond issues last year. And what was their number one driving force? Security. We need security upgrades to keep our children safe. This is on the mind of people today, and rightfully so. And it should be on our minds as a church as well. Are we taking care of our young children and our young families? And it'd be easy for me to say, hey, it doesn't impact me. I have 2 high school age kids. They can take care of themselves, right? But I even think about Pastor Seth's sermon yesterday and the challenge to love our brothers and sisters in Christ, right? And I have to step back and think, okay, am I being selfish and not wanting to maybe make a sacrifice? Or do I want to love my brothers and sisters in Christ and even take care of their kids even if they're not my own? And someday, maybe I'm going to have some grandkids running around this place. But if my boys are listening, not anytime soon, all right? So I think that's an important thing for us to keep in mind and recognize that's a challenge, right? Awana, how many of you help out on a Wednesday night or are here on a Wednesday night? So a few of you, right? You feel the stresses that our building faces on a Wednesday night. And that's an important ministry in our church. It's a great opportunity for us to help plant God's word of truth in their hearts at a young age and impact them. And that's a ministry that we want to see grow. And right now we've kind of maxed out what we can do. We can talk about parking challenges, all right? For some of you, you might recognize the difficulties of just moving around this facility, right? Yesterday when I was going from first service down to get ready to give the first presentation yesterday, it's just funny how God just gives us little signs at times, right? And I'm walking down the stairwell, and Janet Knight is walking in front of me, but we're looking face to face. Think about that. Why? What's Janet doing? Walking down the stairs backwards because it's easier on her knees. All right? And it's a challenge for some of our prime timers that are, again, sharp in mind, but the body just doesn't quite keep up to move around this facility. So can we care for them better, right? Our small foyer, right? We have a worship center that's required us to move to 3 services. We made that move, a little bit less than a year ago. And the idea was we wanted to relieve some pressure that our worship center was facing. And you might look around now and say, well, we got plenty of room. There's plenty of seats on a Sunday morning. And that's true if you're sitting in, second service or even first service or, third service is maybe a little bit fuller. But that doesn't relieve the pressure in other parts of our building, right? That doesn't relieve the pressure in our classroom space and all those sorts of things. And we're asking a lot of our staff, right, to preach 3 times in a row. And I'm a teacher, and I teach a couple times in a row, and I need a break. But thankfully, they give me a break. So, there's just challenges in that. And can we find a way to bring our staff offices together? You think over the last year or so, we've added on 3 young staff members, and all their offices are downstairs, and we have a senior pastor who's upstairs. And for those of us who work in the workplace, we just know if we don't naturally cross paths, we're missing opportunities for interaction to build continuity and relationship and unity, right? And when we're spread out over 2 floors, we see that, all right? So these are things that we want to think about. Okay, can we make some improvements in those areas, all right? So in our mid-year meeting last year in May, the elders shared a motion that we made and unanimously approved in our board meeting on May 1st with the church body. And we said, recognizing the limitations of our current facility and our responsibility for biblical discipleship, it is our desire to move to a different facility that better meets the needs of our growing church family, right? And our goal through that is, can we enhance the ministries that we currently have going strong? Awana, what happens on a Sunday morning here at CBC? And can we set CBC up for its next 50 years of ministry? Sometimes I kind of jokingly say it, but I really mean it. If Jesus would just come back tomorrow, it'd make all this a lot easier, right? But we don't know when he's returning, so we do have a responsibility to look forward into the future and to make sacrifices and decisions that impact the future. And hopefully we all have a heart for CBC and want to see it continue strong into the future and what God has called it to do here in Omaha. And so as we've kind of analyzed all this information, the elder board, we kind of began to look at 3 possible solutions, all right? Can we expand at our current facility? All right, do we consider purchasing ground and building new? Or the third solution that I'm going to save for the end, and that's the recommendation that we're making to move. And so I'd like to walk you kind of through each one of these to understand why we've came to the conclusion that solution 3 makes the most sense, all right? And so again, if you have questions as we go through this, I'd encourage you to jot those down on that note card as we work our way through, all right? So sometime around 2016, Mel had worked with some architects to come up with some potential solutions for what we could do on our current facility. And so one of those solutions was to build a worship center off of the west end of our building, okay? So they came up with the idea, and you can kind of see it on that diagram up there. So I get to play with a laser pointer. I don't get this very often, all right? So about a 505-seat sanctuary. And then we can also see there would be a parking expansion with that, right? Some of you who've been around CBC know we've purchased a couple houses along 91st Street, all right? We'd have to purchase a third one, all right? We could demolish those, and then we could expand our parking, okay? Now, in 2016, that had a cost of about $5 million, all right? And as you look at that solution, we might think, well, that seems kind of nice, but when you really stop and think about it, it doesn't solve everything that we've talked about, right? We've increased our worship center size, but we haven't increased our parking. We've added in some parking spots, but we lose some in the building of the worship center, right? So maybe we gain a few, but it's going to be minimal. So we could build a 505-seat worship center, but we don't have parking to support 505 people. We change our lobby size, but we haven't done anything to touch children's ministries areas, right, for that $5 million price tag, okay? Another option that was presented by those architects was to expand our worship center, kind of push it back a little bit, take out the offices that are off to my left and your right, all right, and expand the worship center that way, and then also build out to put on a larger lobby area and a larger foyer. We could also do the same parking expansion to the west, right, along with those houses. But again, when you think about this solution, again, we might have more room in our worship center, but we haven't touched children's ministries area. We've made a little bit of gain on the parking side, all right, and some other. Sure.
Clarify. On the children's ministry that you're talking about for the security, are you talking about the fact that we have to come down the stairs and go through the main hallway to get to the kitchen, or are you talking about the access to the door where people are coming in and out and we don't know who's coming in and out?
I'm talking about all of our church body traveling through that hallway on the way to the kitchen. Okay.
I thought maybe part of it was the door.
No. We can control that to an extent by locking it, right? But we still can't control, I mean, if somebody comes in the front doors, walks right down through that children's ministry area. For those who work in the children's ministry area, you know what a challenge it is just to take a kid to the bathroom, right? And so like those sorts of security issues, you know, that we've got a challenge with. Yeah, so good question, okay? So again, this would, you know, it'd expand our worship center, but we're still dealing with some of the same issues. One thing I'll point out on this as well, when you look off to the left side there, you kind of see that orange rectangle. That identifies part of this project would be putting in an elevator, okay? And we've talked about that as a church body. We've talked about that as an elder board. And the challenges that presents is we're putting an elevator in a very busy, congested part of our church, right? And so again, as we think about, are we being a wise steward of our resources? Are we spending our money wisely? Are we solving things, or are we creating more problems? And those are things that we kind of have to balance, and we have to think about as we go through this process. So when you think about those two options of could we do something here on our current facility, you know, both options kind of run into the same headache. We haven't touched the security of our children's ministry area. We haven't really made a big impact on our parking issue, and we haven't done anything in terms of bringing our staff offices together. The other thing to realize is that both of those options require us to purchase a third home along 91st Street, which is not included in the costs that were on those previous slides. Say it again. A fourth home, thank you. A fourth home, we have 3, we need 4. So a fourth home, and then we also need city approval to demolish those and build a parking lot, and there's no guarantee that that would happen. So when we think about a price tag of $5 million and $2.4 million, you know, is it wise of us to ask our church body to think about something like that when we're not solving all of our problems and there's no guarantee that it can happen, okay? So that brings us to the second solution, which is, do we consider purchasing land and building a new facility, okay? And this is one, as an elder board, we didn't spend a lot of time focused on or researching, because to us this was a pretty obvious no for a couple of reasons. If you know anything about where we're currently at, there's not a lot of free land available, right? So if we're going to look at open space large enough to handle a church, that's going to require a major move in terms of distance to the south, to the west, to the north, and that's a major disruption to our congregation. It's also probably hands down the most expensive option when you consider purchasing land, right, grading that land and getting it ready to build on, building a parking lot and a building. I mean, we're probably going to approach a $10 million number pretty quickly just to build a reasonable sized church. And so from our minds as an elder, this just didn't make very much sense again. All right, so that brings us to the third option, the third solution. All right, can we look at a facility that already exists, purchase it, and remodel it? And so that's what I'd like to spend some time talking about with you here tonight. All right, so what do the elders envision for a new facility? And we'll kind of talk about how we came to these numbers a little bit. So the elders envision about 45,000 square feet. Now, could we dream bigger than that? And there were a lot of comments and questions about that yesterday. Absolutely. But that requires money or giving, right? So we need to work reasonably, right? Dream reasonably, but we can always pray for bigger, right? So about a 45,000 square feet building is what we would anticipate is opening the doors for us and setting us up strong for the next 50 years. We'd finish about 30,000 square feet of that. Now, if you, again, go back to the numbers that I shared earlier, all of our current square footage is about 27,000 square feet. All right, but if you start to put pen to paper and think about numbers, and we did this at our elder retreat, what do we want to see in a building, about how much square footage is that going to take? Could we consider that this is going to fit in a 30,000 square foot facility? And the answer we came up with was yes. We could fit a lot of things in a 30,000 square foot facility. Now, you might think that's not a huge increase in square footage, but I grew up in a construction business. My dad owns a construction company, so I haven't built, but I've helped build a lot of homes. And I'd compare it to this. If you walk into a 2,000 square foot split level home, you've been in a split level home, right? So you walk in and it just doesn't seem like the best use of space. Everything seems small, right? It's kind of tight. And then I walk into a 2,000 square foot ranch style home, right? And how much bigger that can seem with an open floor plan. The space is more functional, right? And that's what we would envision in a facility. Can we find a single level facility, right, where we can make a space that's more functional and flexible, and we can really feel a lot more comfortable? We can increase our size without necessarily increasing our footprint entirely bigger, right? And so those are things that we started to process. Okay, that's kind of our vision. So what could we put in that, right? What are some things that the elders would like to see in a future facility? And so we've talked about a worship center, right? Could we grow our worship center to seat about 400? Right, again, our current worship center seats about 270, okay? So to grow that to about 400. Designed with the ability to grow a little bit larger, okay? I think I overshot that number, didn't I? Like 200 or 210. Yeah, I don't, now I'm forgetting. I think you're right, yeah. So our worship center is much smaller than 270. I've got too many numbers going in my head tonight, so I apologize. So, and then a foyer that's much larger, right? An area where people can meet and have a conversation and not feel like they're in the way, and not feel like I need to get out the door so that I can make room for people to come in, all right? And so we worked with, actually, Kathy Dick's company that she works for, Design Basics. They come up with home floor plans, and they've got a contact that can put together some architectural renderings. So we'll just share some pictures with you. This isn't, and I got to be upfront, this is just to help give you a vision, right? This isn't what it's going to look like exactly, but what could be, right? And it's fun to kind of dream and think about what could be. And so here's what a 400-seat worship center could look like, right? Again, it's not going to look exactly like that, right? But it gives you an idea of what could be. How about a larger, more welcoming entryway, right? And so we've got a couple images here. So you can see walking into a front desk, where if I'm a guest, I know right where to go, as opposed to now you walk in and you got to turn around and catch it, right? Think about an area just for people to have a conversation, to sit and meet and connect with each other. And you can kind of look down the hallway right in there. You kind of see this orange dot walking down to a more secure children's facility, right, that's set off to the side that we're not all traveling through. And we'll give you some images of what that could potentially look like here in just a moment as well, okay? So think larger worship center, a larger foyer. A secure children's ministry area. Could we come up with classrooms, and I know that is kind of small, but could they be centered around an open area where we can release our children to, and they've got space to move and be kids, and then go to their classrooms, and a young mom can drop her kids off and know, right, the only people who are back there are those who are supposed to be back there with my kids. Not everybody in the church is going to be walking through that area. A nursery area would be important. A couple of classrooms for our middle school and high school students. You think about what they have to do on a Sunday morning, this past Sunday. It's kind of chilly on Sunday. And our middle school and high school students were coming from here and walking across the street to the annex to go to their Sunday school classes. On a Wednesday night, our Trek students have to meet off-site, right? They have to go over to Mockingbird Elementary to hold Trek because we don't have room for them here. So could we bring that all underneath one roof? So here's some fun pictures. You talk about what could a children's ministry area look like. You got a couple pictures here. So what in the heck are those green and blue things? That's some slides, right? So Chuck's fired up. He gets bored on a Wednesday, needs to blow off some steam as he's working on a sermon. He just goes up and down the slides a few times. So again, just an image of what could be, right? And you think about, as you look at that picture, this kind of shows a secure area with classrooms centered around it. This would be a shot of, once you slide out of those slides, right, you're looking back to where the check-in area is. And we can put some restrooms on each side, nice and close, secured, right, making it easier to take our kids to the bathroom on a Sunday morning. A nursery and a secure check-in area. So again, those are the things that we think about. We could take better care of our church family in this process, and some doors that are open through that, all right? How about some other things that would be considered in a new facility? A kitchen would be important to us. That's an important one of our ministries on a Wednesday night. We see that continuing and in being an important part moving forward, the chance to come together for those who do on a Wednesday night and connect with some of their brothers and sisters in Christ. A large multi-use area, all right? We won't call it a gym. We're not worried about does it have basketball hoops in it, but do we have a large area that we can use for multiple things, to serve a Wednesday night meal and to put an Awana circle in. An expanded space for adult Bible classes. We've brought on some young staff members who've got some great ideas. One of them is Seth right over here, and he's talked about what he could do if he had space on a Wednesday night to minister to young parents and young people who are bringing their kids to Awana, and now not only can we meet their kids' needs, but we can also minister to them on a Wednesday night. We don't have the space to do that currently, right? Because we're using the entire facility for the Awana ministry. And again, offices to connect to keep our staff a little bit more connected, okay? So those are things that we would envision in a move to a new facility. Can we find a facility that would give us the opportunity to do those things, all right? So now that brings us to the fun questions, all right? Like, all those things are great, but at some point, we've got to ask the question, what might this cost us, okay? Now, I mentioned I'm a high school teacher, all right? And if there's anything I'm really good at as a high school teacher, I'm not afraid to ask questions, and I'm not afraid to research. And so we have done a lot of research. We have talked to a lot of people, and based on our research, we've estimated, and it's estimate on the high side, right? And hope it comes in low. But we can anticipate that you look at current building costs for these types of facilities, and it's very reasonable for us to consider, $2.5 million as a purchase price for a 45,000 square foot facility, okay? And then you talk to people who do build-outs, all right? What's it going to cost to do a build-out? So we've had conversations with people who have built out facilities like this. And if we're going to build out about 30,000 square feet, we're looking at about $1.7 million, okay? And again, we're estimating on the high side. Now, might we hit that number? You bet, right? I mean, if you've done remodeling, who knows what might happen, right? But again, we've got to have some numbers to work with here. So that's a total of about $4.2 million, okay? Oh, I forgot to switch that one. I switched it down here, not up there. All right. So about $4.2 million. So where does that money come from? Okay. Well, we have an asset that we are in right now. Right? We can sell this facility. We can sell the homes that we own along 91st Street already. And again, based on the research that we've done, we estimate low on this side, right? Estimate high on the top side, estimate low on this side. We estimate about $1.6 million. Okay? We have about $100,000 in a development fund, so that puts us at about $1.7 million. So that leaves us a need of about 2.5. Okay? So as you think about what could be done, that's what we think from a dollar standpoint. Okay? Now at this point, some of you might be scratching your head a little bit because we've talked about a capital campaign and we've talked about a goal of $1 million for a capital campaign. So where did that number come from? Okay? Well, again, I'm not a professional capital campaign runner. I just hang out with high school kids on a Monday through Friday basis, right? So we have to talk to people who do capital campaigns. And as we've researched and talked to people, they say as a church launches a capital campaign, it is very reasonable. And the goal that they recommend is you take your annual church budget, and that's what you strive for over a 3-year period. So if we look at CBC's current annual budget, it's about $1 million. That's our capital campaign goal over 3 years. Okay? So where's the other 1.5 come from? Right? Well, much like if you were going to build a house or remodel, you might have to consider taking a loan. Right? It wouldn't be like CBC in the past. CBC in the past, as they've had building projects, have taken out loans. And so for some people, that $1.5 million could seem like a big number. Again, I'm a high school teacher, so I think small salary numbers, that's a big number, right? For some people, that's nothing, all right? And we're all in different places in that. And again, we have to be respectful of that. But one thing that we have to keep in mind as well is we don't know how God is going to provide in this process. We can set a goal of $1 million, and God might say, I'd go bigger than that, right? And so it's important for us to, again, share the information with you so that you can process through all that as we kind of go through all of this information, okay? And so as we think about what's this going to cost, those are the numbers that we can confidently lay before you as an elder board and ask you to prayerfully consider how you can be a part of this in the future. So let's talk about a few more things here. All right, what are questions we do not have the answer to right now? This is where the forward in faith comes into play, right? Again, an appropriate capital campaign theme. Oh, thank you. All right, we don't know where we're moving, okay? And we don't know when we're moving, right? And that might seem like a difficult thing, but we also have to understand if God is at the lead of this, and we as an elder board have been in a lot of prayer and a lot of conversation, and we're thankful for the prayers of many of you that have been praying for this in advance, we're going to trust that He's going to open the doors at the right time, and that those dominoes are going to fall as they need to fall, and He's going to provide at the right time. And this, again, is the challenge that we have before us. For some of us, it's a lot easier to give if I know where, and I can go look at it, right? But our challenge is to walk by faith and not by sight. God, we may not even have the facility that He's going to put us on our radar yet, right? And we're trusting Him to lead through that process. And it's a challenging ask. We can recognize that. If all the dominoes fell into place at the right time, and God opened the right doors at the right time, we could reasonably move into a new building in about 3 years. We don't have to wait till the end of our capital campaign to begin the next step in the process. And so that's important to understand as well. And as we continue on this process, we're not going to launch a campaign and then sit and wait. As an elder board, we're going to stay active and do what we can to keep momentum moving. We can start to research facilities, and we can start to look into the next phase of things. So that's important to kind of keep in mind as we go. So what's next? So a couple of things. I'd ask you to be in prayer. As you came in tonight, hopefully you picked up one of these cards that's got some prayer requests for each day of the week. And we would encourage you to slide that into your Bible or put it next to your coffee cup in the morning, and every day just take a look at the prayer requests for the day. And I've told our capital campaign team, if we don't bathe this thing in prayer, our work is kind of fruitless. And so we would encourage you to join us in prayer through this whole process. And that's going to be an important piece. Right? Our job as elders is to continue to share information with you. That's one of the purposes behind this town hall meeting. We're going to share information and give you the opportunity to give questions and concerns and feedback, and then it's going to be our responsibility to come back and answer those, right? And we need to keep communication open. And I've never been a part of a capital campaign before, but I've been a part of a lot of team processes, both with teenagers as a coach and also at different various levels at the school district where I work. And if there's one thing that I can say is very important in any process as we go through things, it's communication. And communication is a two-way street. It's our job as elders to communicate, but it's also the responsibility of our congregation to communicate. I tell my high school students all the time, I'm not a mind reader. I can't read what's going on in your head right now, right? And the only way that we can help move along this process together is as if we're willing to share our concerns and our questions. And again, to recognize the normal part of the process is that emotions might go up and down from day to day. As we process this and we think through this, this isn't a simple decision to make. And so I would encourage you to be in communication, right? Don't hesitate to ask a question or share a concern with an elder. What I've found in my life working with many, many groups of people is where there's a breakdown in communication, Satan is really good at filling that void with negativity. And we would ask that I'm not saying we're necessarily going to agree, right? But can we have a conversation and can we communicate through things? That's an extremely important part of this process. And so that's your opportunity even on that white card. Share some thoughts, some questions, some concerns. Be honest. Share what's on your heart right now. You don't have to put your name. It's anonymous, right? You can if you would like to. And if it's a question you want to have a conversation about in the near future, you can put your name down and we'll reach out. I shared yesterday, if you want to go and have a cup of coffee and talk over this, I'm not a coffee drinker, but as cold as it's been, I might become one soon. So maybe I'll join you in that cup of coffee, but we can sit and have a conversation. We can dialogue. And we can walk alongside you as you go through processing all this information like we have already done as an elder board. It's our job now to step back and walk alongside each of you. And so that's the important part of the communication. And we'd encourage you to put Sunday, April 28th on your calendar. Our capital campaign team is working hard, and we're going to have a banquet on Sunday, April 28th. And we're going to formally launch off this capital campaign, and we're going to invite all of you to be there and be a part of that. And so we want to give you plenty of time between now and then to think about how you might be a part of this process. And we'll share more information about that as we go along. So that brings me to the end of all my information.